So this is a review of the Flyin Miata Throttle Linearizer after about 400 miles of driving. I daily drive my Miata and road trip the Miata. So up front, the construction is excellent. The performance is exactly as described from Flyin Miata. The description of it doesn't fully cover what a driver should expect, though. So, first, the pedal feel is going to be slightly different. That is going to be the most obvious thing immediately. The stock armature has a constant radius. That means when you are pressing the pedal feel, the resistance, is going to feel near constant from no throttle to wide open. With the throttle linearizer, the radius changes, and that means that initial throttle is lighter than stock and wide open throttle is more resistance than stock. In practice, I've not noticed this to be a problem. It is something you will notice immediately. Derivative of that, the light throttle application it's much improved compared to stock. The linear control of airflow going into the engine means that at light throttle, there's a lot more control. It's much easier in traffic to putt around at low speed. It's much easier to back into driveways. And the cruise control, it is subtle, but it does perform better with the throttle linearizer installed. I will get into more detail with that after going over some install notes, because I did have some issues related to install when troubleshooting the part after it was installed and just noticing that I had wear that did not make sense. So first, the instructions tell you to tighten the nut until the spring washer flattens against the throttle armature. This is insufficient. That throttle armature is a tight fit onto the rod. And so initially when tightening that nut, the armature it's going to have enough resistance where that washer is going to flatten up before the armature is actually fully seated against the clock springs. So what you actually want to do is you want to tighten that nut and keep tightening that nut until you feel a spike in resistance. You can actually watch the armature slowly snug up against the clock spring while doing that. At that point, do not tighten more than about half of a wrench flat. And related to that, a socket is recommended to use as a tool. That may work for some people. I ran into issues directly related to using a socket. I found that the cable, after throttle cable tension was adjusted, was not fully seating against the cam profile of the throttle linearizer, and nothing I did related to throttle cable tension could solve the problem. So after troubleshooting, during one of my inspections where I had removed the part and was reinstalling it, I used wrenches instead of sockets to install the part and found that the cable fully seated against the cam profile, which was interesting. So I pulled my sockets out and found the sockets no longer would actually fit over the nut. There wasn't enough clearance. So I think for some people, if they're using sockets, the sidewall thickness could be thicker than expected and could cause the part to sit incorrectly. And so with that possibility already being observed on my end, somebody else is going to have the problem. I recommend after the part is installed, drive for a gas tank worth or like 200 miles and then commit to pulling the part off and inspecting that cam groove for wear. I will splice in some footage of chafing wear and contact wear. Contact wear is acceptable. That will look pretty much like the pattern of the cable just simply embedding itself into the surface. That is not going to be an issue long term. Chafing wear looks like sandpaper rubbing across the surface, file running across the surface, linear wear. Any signs of that is unacceptable. That is something where you need to figure out what's going on, because The stainless steel cable will eat through that aluminum if there is any sign of chafing wear. So that out of the way, more detailed observation. So cruise control performance. It is greatly improved, and the easiest way to explain how is the circumstance where going up a hill, the cruise control is going to apply more throttle, and then going down that same hill, the cruise control is going to let off throttle to maintain speed. I've found the stock cruise control in that circumstance typically will let off the throttle completely and then will hunt to try and find that light throttle application that still maintains speed. With the throttle linearizer, I've found in most cases that hunting is completely gone or essentially muted to the point where it goes away. And then, as I mentioned before, low-speed driving is improved, and I think this is directly why. The throttle linearizer, it provides increased resolution for light throttle and trades that off for decreased resolution at near wide open throttle. And this is also the reason why I think for race applications it's going to be a driver preference modification, because if you're spending most of your time near wide open throttle, I can see some drivers appreciating the stock armature's increased resolution near wide open more so than than having a linear throttle response, and that I can that's going to be a driver preference thing, and I can really see that being a configuration thing too, where somebody that has a turbocharged car, somebody that's naturally aspirated, it could dictate based off of those changes to the car as well. But for people that are running effectively something akin to a stock Miata and they're daily driving it or driving it on road trips, this part is likely to be considered just a direct upgrade. So unrelated to the part, cable adjustment. Consider that a requirement, absolutely, for the throttle cable, and for cars that are equipped with cruise control. If you cannot remember adjusting that cruise control cable, do so. Cruise control performance is directly related to correct cruise control cable and throttle cable tension, and this is because that cruise control diaphragm has a cable that runs from the diaphragm to the throttle pedal, from the throttle pedal to the throttle plate. And so if either the throttle cable or the cruise control cable is loose, the performance is degraded. It's actually easy to observe while driving. If you engage cruise control and it takes more than a half second for that thing to catch the throttle, one or both of your cables are loose and should be adjusted. But I would just adjust both of those as part of this, because for most people, they probably have never touched it, which means those cables at this point could have been left in some stock state for 30 years. So they will have stretched. And then on that note, when tensioning the cables, it's easy enough where you can adjust until you find that the throttle plate closes reliably all the way. And then from there, back off about a half turn on the cable tension nuts. And that should get you to a good place. Fine tuning from there, it is a subtle but significant improvement in pedal feel. And so for drivers that are willing to go the extra distance, I recommend do that initial cable adjustment and then go on some errands or something where you're going to get the car up to full temp, and more specifically, you're going to get everything in the engine bay hot. At that point, if you find that the throttle is hanging open, that tells you you need to reduce cable tension. And as far as this procedure goes, first do the throttle cable, and then for cars with cruise control, after the throttle cable has been dialed, only then adjust the cruise control cable tension. Do not do it the other way. When doing the adjustment for fine tuning, I recommend go 2 wrench flats at a time. That's enough adjustment where you should get there fairly quickly, and not so much that you're gonna wish for even finer precision. And that's really all I got to say about this. Just to reiterate, it's a great product. It does exactly as it's described. I think a lot of people are going to like it. It does nothing for performance. So for anybody that's tight on cash, you can put this at the bottom of your upgrades list. If you're the kind of person that will buy a new steering wheel simply because it feels better in the hand, this is a product that'll probably appeal to you greatly. So, thanks for watching.